Yo, I'm gonna blow some more dough on my Honda. I'm gonna do a rear brake conversion kit and put some front brakes on it. A lot of people say just use Integra rear control arms, but anything I get for this car is going to be rustier than everything that's on the car. So I don't want to put some rusty old crap on my car. So I bought these brackets made by Scarebird, I think it's called. And that's supposed to bolt on rear calipers for an Integra or a 99 2000 Civic Si. I bought some really expensive brake pads because people told me that's the good stuff for high-speed braking, because I think I'm going to try to race this thing if I ever get my tuning squared away. Bought some cheap brake lines, braided brake lines off of eBay. I got a couple of brand new emergency brake cables for a 2000 Civic Si. I had to buy two different brands off of Rock Auto. And I got some E-coated rotors. I'm going to put some Bosch 5.1 brake fluid in it. And I went real cheap. I found these for 40 bucks at a junkyard off an Integra. And I actually put them in water and I de-rusted them with electrolysis for about 4 hours. Made sure they were real dry when I was done. I probably wouldn't recommend putting them in water for 4 hours, but I did anyways. And I just made sure they were like this way so no water could get trapped inside of the e-brake stuff. And I made sure the dust boots were clean, and I put a little penetrant on the inside of the dust boots too. So if any water did get in there, hopefully that penetrant did help cover it. And then I blew them off really good. They came out really nice. These were rusty as hell, and I think they're going to work just fine. I did the caliper support brackets too. I painted it with VHT caliper paint, and I'm supposed to bake these at 200 degrees after you get done with all of this, because then they'll be chemical resistant with this paint, but I'm not going to do that. I figure if I put them on the car, I'll just try to keep his brake fluid off of it as much as possible, and when I go do a bunch of high-speed braking, it'll get that hot, and hopefully this paint will bake on. I just got to be careful about getting brake fluid on them, I think. And I'm going to paint the front ones with them on the car. Those are rust-free. I think they're original calipers on the front too, and they look great. So I probably just need to wire brush them, and then I'll put a couple coats of black paint on those before I even take them off. And of course I made sure that the brake hoses were plugged off too, so no water got in there when I did this. This one still had a hose on it that I'm not going to use, and I just left this sticking out of the bucket. I don't think I have to worry too much about getting overspray on my fancy paint. Wow, look at that. I thought it was all like rusty or something. It's just dirt. The black's coming back. Wow, it still even shines a little bit. I kind of cleaned these calipers already with a regular brake cleaner. It's been about 10 minutes. This black paint's just starting to fade out, so I can put another coat on it. That should be good. I'm going to get as much of this brake fluid out of here as I possibly can. There's a little filter in here I got to take out. Since it's a gazillion years old, there's still some sediment in this reservoir, and I'm not going to take it off, so I'm just going to take a bunch of Q-tips and just swab them around in here and just try to get as much of the sediment out of the bottom of the reservoir as I can. I'm going to unbolt all these brake lines next, and I'm just going to let all the rest of the fluid just drain right out. I have a 10mm line wrench here. I don't have a whole lot of rust to deal with, thankfully, so these lines are probably going to come off real nice. There's a clip right here I want to get out. Try a little baby vice grip on it. There, I got it. It's a good idea not to get any of this brake fluid on any paint either, because it will eat your paint. Let it drip. And then this caliper, I can pull in the piston on this caliper and a lot of this brake fluid will come right out of this hose. Yeah, that caliper piston's pulled in all the way. Amazing. Almost all of these cars, usually this line turns with the nut and it don't want to come off in the rear because it rusted right on. This one popped right off. There's one more clip right here. Now there's some shielding that's on top of the exhaust that I got to take off, and the cover for the gas tank has to come off too, because there's one bolt for one emergency brake cable on the driver's side that I got to get at, and that cover's in the way. And most of it's just plastic clips, Phillips screw heads with plastic clips and 10 millimeters, and it all comes off. I need to take out this center console to get at the emergency brake cables, and there's 3 screws on each side of this center console. There's one in the front you can get out if you put the seat all the way back. And if you put the seat all the way up, you can get at the 2 in the back. Actually, I can get at this one right here. Okay, there's one more I can get at when I move the seat all the way up. Well, I can't really get these emergency brake cables unclipped from under the center console until I unbolt them down here. I'm going to take all the bolts off of the e-brake cables. Okay, I got it all unbolted. And I'll just take the same ones off of the other side. I can just lift this up a little bit. There's 2 12 millimeters under here. I should be able to get these out like so. And this thing slides out. Then I could just pull these out of the hole. Fish it out from under this gas tank strap. Get a little chisel action after this dust cap. I have an 1¼ inch socket for this. I can pull this hub out with the bearing in the washer. Then I have 4 14 millimeter bolts. I can just take this whole unit off. Well, looks like I can't get the cable through the holes because there are brackets on here. I'm going to take those off because I don't want to take any of this stuff apart. I'm too damn lazy for that. I just got to spread these open. Through the hole. I'm going to scrape as much of this scale off of here as I can so I get a nice flat surface. They don't have any destructions for this. I'm thinking that it goes this way, because I'm going to put the hub on here and make sure I'm right. I'm just going to lay my caliper support bracket up here against that and make sure it's centered. And it's centered, it's not hitting, so I got it right. They give me a bag of bolts and they're all the same length. I'm going to put some red Loctite on these. I'm going to torque these to 55 foot-pounds. Yeah, I don't like how they feel. I'm going to chase these threads. These are 10 millimeter by 125. I'm going to use a tap. I suppose a thread chaser would work just as good. Now I can put the spindle back on. That gets torqued to 134. It's obviously right because it's in the same spot as it was before. Crush this down in there to lock it in. I don't see any oils on this rotor, so I'm just going to put it on. There's no screws for it either because this is a drum hub. For whatever reason, those overpriced high-performance brake pads did not come with any abutment clips, which for the price of them is amazing. I'm going to do 55 foot-pounds on these too. There's shims on the back of these pads. These are HPSs. I'm putting on the rears, and I'm taking them off. The only reason why these are here is for noise. I'll get a better pedal feel out of it if I take these off. I don't care if they make noise. They give you some high temperature grease for these contact surfaces too. These are 12 millimeter. Actually, one's a 12 and one's a 14. Probably because it's aftermarket. I'm going to tighten these at 25 foot-pounds. Make sure they slide really nice. Pads slide in there really nice. I assembled these pins. I put dielectric grease in them or silicone paste. Don't use a lubricant that comes with the pads on these slides. That would be wrong. I'm going to put the emergency brake cable on next. I actually had to make a pin for this. I got a clevis pin from the hardware store and it was really long and I had to cut it down and I had to grind it a little bit so it fits in the hole because it was a little bit big. I got one of these clips left over from the brake lines, so I'm going to use that for this. I ended up putting it in this first hole. I don't know where it's supposed to be. I think it seems to fit the best right there though. The drum brake e-brake cable was in this hole. I already got it under the strap. So I just gotta bolt the rest of this up. Now I can put one of these steel brake lines on. Just a 8x125 millimeter bolt and a washer and a nut I had laying around. I'm gonna need to use that for mounting this thing. First thing I'm gonna do is just start this line up here. I don't want to get it all the way tight yet because I want to be able to turn it. I got a couple of new copper sealing washers that did not come with these lines. I don't want to get that tight yet either. I'm going to use that hole that the drum brake line was in. I'm just going to put this over here like that. Stick the bolt through and put the washer and the nut on the back of it. And I think that's going to hold it in there pretty good. As far as this banjo bolt goes, there's a torque spec for these, but I usually don't like to use them. I like to just feel these things crush. I just do them by hand. It feels like it's crushed all the way. Then I'll just go a little bit more. All this stuff too I'm going to have to check after I bleed the brakes and use the brakes for a little while. I want to make sure none of these banjo bolts are leaking. Yeah, I'll be checking this one too. I'm going to put this clip in now. These aftermarket jobbies are kind of strange because these nuts can turn. So it's not like the factory ones where they don't. And I got a 3/4 inch wrench on the thing. Sometimes it's a good idea too to loosen the nut and tighten it again, just to make sure the compression fitting is seated really nice. When I did the other rear brake line, I realized that there's a little bend in the rear lines, so I had to turn this one 180 degrees, and now it's not touching my shock. I just loosened up this line and turned it. Now for the fronts, I kind of forgot to make a video on taking it all apart, but there's a 12 millimeter here, two 17 millimeters here, and then two 14 millimeters for the support brackets. I think these are supposed to be like 90 foot-pounds or something crazy. I just use an impact. I got Hawk HP pluses for the front. I like to put the wear indicator on the top because the rotor spins this way, so usually the top wears out faster than the bottom. I cleaned and filed these contact surfaces on the piston, and right here I got them as flat as I possibly could with no scale or high spots. I put new silicone paste or dielectric grease on these slides. These are 12 millimeters. They get tightened to 17 foot-pounds. Just like the rear, I'm going to start this nut first. That's a 12 millimeter. I ran out of crush washers, so I got to use the original ones. Like I say, I'll have to check them and make sure they don't leak later on in life. I think I kind of want it underneath that caliper bolt. And I got it turned all the way out, so the line is as long as it can possibly be right now. That should be okay like that. I'm going to put my tire on. Just make sure none of this is going to rub. It looks really good. It's not even close to hitting the tire. So I'm just going to turn it all the way to the right and all the way to the left. And make sure it doesn't rub. Looks good. I got all of my lines on, all of my calipers on. I'm going to put some new fluid in here now. Just going to take the whole bottle and tip it upside down like that, and it won't leak out. Now I just ran 4 hoses, opened up all 4 bleeders, and I'm going to let it sit. See how long this takes to gravity bleed. Hopefully it'll gravity bleed. We'll see. Stuff's pouring right out. I think this corner's bled. Close it up, and I'll do the other 3 corners. I think I have all 4 corners bled. So I'm just going to slowly push the pedal down. I'm going to load all these calipers up. This will help push all the excess air out of the calipers too. I got a nice hard pedal. I'll wait 10 seconds, push it down again. The pedal should be in the same spot, and it is, so there's no air in the system. I'm going to make sure these calipers aren't hung up, and they're not, which is good. Excellent. So I know these calipers are good. Now I'm just going to finish emptying out this bottle. I'm just going to guess and try to get half of that tin to gravity bleed through the rears. I emptied out the whole can. That dot 5.1, it naturally looks a little yellow. It's going to be a little overfilled, but I want it to be. I just hope it don't come flying out of here. Oh yeah, that's fine. I'm going to deal with the e-brake. I'll push this down as far as I can. Okay, nuts on this. I'm not getting it, so I'm going to loosen this up. This adjuster. That should give me lots more room to deal with. There it goes. Now as far as the e-brake setting goes, I like about 5 clicks. And that goes all the way up, so it's no good. I gotta tighten this up a bunch. There's a window back here too. I can actually put this on and adjust it, but I don't think I need to do that. All right, about 5 clicks. Now that the e-brake's all the way disengaged and I get about 5 clicks out of it and it's really tight, now I just got to make sure that the rotors aren't hanging up at all. Yeah, I went out and checked. The rotors aren't hanging up at all. Whenever you have an e-brake that's on a caliper, a lot of times when you put new ones on and you activate it a bunch of times, it'll push air up into the caliper. So a lot of times it traps excess air. And now that I stomped on the pedal a whole bunch after I bled it, and I hit that emergency brake a bunch, I'm just going to crack this bleeder open, and I might get a little air come out of it. And that should be all the air. It's also a good idea to look at this stopper pin on the e-brake and make sure that the stopper on the emergency brake is hitting that pin, because if this is out of adjustment and it's too tight, it won't be sitting on this pin. But it does feel really nice. Well, there it is. I like the looks of the thing. Now I just got to go down the road at 30 miles an hour to 0 about 4 or 5 times, and then go on the freeway and hit the brakes a couple of times, and it should bed these pads in really nice. I actually have a set of really nice cozy rims and ultra high performance tires, but I'm not going to put them on. These are my road beater tires. I like the whole childish amateur sleeper look anyways. Okay, bye.